Welcome to episode 23 of Whole Lot of Wolves. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
And I'm Paul LePage.
And we have a new guest to introduce this week. He's all the way from the West Coast. Say hi to Steve Evans out in LA. How you doing, Steve?
Doing great. Really appreciate you guys having me on.
So go ahead and tell us a story about how you became a Wolves fan.
I was born in Wolverhampton, so back when I was young, I moved to America in 98. I was born in 71. And of course, back then, the big successful team was Liverpool. So in a sports lesson at school, what we call a games lesson, half of the kids wore Wolves shirts, half wore Liverpool. I think there was one, for some reason, that wore West Brom, which he regretted later. And that was that. So it's really a Wolves fan all of my life. I've been to plenty of games when I live there. And when I get back, if it's in season, I certainly try to go too.
So what's it been like as a Wolves fan in LA? Because I know Paul and I, once Raul Jimenez got signed by the club, we get, anytime I'm wearing Wolves stuff, same with Paul, we get a lot of comments from the Mexican fans. I heard you get the same reaction.
It's the same around LA, exactly. For years and years, I'd wear a Wolves shirt and kind of be invisible, particularly when we're stuck in the championship forever. I get the occasional, oh, who's that team? Never heard of them. And I've heard of Man United. That's what people would say. And then since Raul came to the team, it just took off. I was wearing the kit a couple of years ago, and I noticed literally every time I left the house, at least one person would say something. It's been in the supermarket, Home Depot, petrol station, beach, you name it. There's always a comment. And one of the most cool ones, I think I was in a Starbucks, and I was wearing the away shirt from a couple of years ago, when it was plain white without this blue on it. And the guy's, oh, that's the Wolves. I said, yes. I don't know if there's this guy who plays for them, Raul Jimenez, and I turned around and had number 9 Raul on the back. And the guy almost fell over. And then when I say I'm from there, people think it's really cool. And it's great to have the connection. LA is very passionate about football, particularly the Hispanic, the Mexican descendant people. They're really into it. When we go to our local games here, 90% of the crowd are Hispanic, and they bring a great atmosphere.
Yeah, I wish that's something the Houston Dynamo would do. I know LAFC and LA Galaxy do a really good job of appealing to the Mexican fans. That's something the Dynamo have been lacking. That hopefully they'll be able to correct that soon. Let's talk about Newcastle. It was an interesting game, 1-1 draw. It was maddening at times. It was thrilling at times, and it's one of those where you're probably happy with the point, but also a little disappointed we couldn't close in and get those 3 points late. What do you think, Paul?
I thought it was such a microcosm of the season that it had everything that we've had this year. Slow start, lethargic, burst into life, flashes of brilliance from Adana or Neto, but no one there to finish it, no real penetration within the box. Bit of magic from Neves. It had just everything, but it just so frustrating again that it's Newcastle again. And all due respect, we can't break these teams down when we've got 5 at the back, home or away from home. I don't think he's not got the squad at the moment. I don't think without Bolly to play 4 at the back, which would have been a game yesterday, I think, which would have been ready-made for it. Yeah, it's a little bit. I feel a little bit meh that we could have got a win at the end. Last 10 minutes, we were much more dominant team. But even then, that was down to Almiron going off after the first half. Saint Maximo, who had Dendoncker on strings a lot of the time. So that was we didn't beat a poor Newcastle team without 2 of their best players in the second half. So, yeah, that's a poor reflection on yesterday. But, yeah, some positives as well. But I've just got a feeling of frustration and microcosm of where the season's been, really.
How'd you feel, Steve?
It's definitely been a rough season. Obviously, it's picked up in the last month because on the positive side, we've got 11 out of the last 15 points, which after defeat is not too shabby, but compared to the last 2 years before, still not so great. The The start was slow, which is almost expected now, but there was that period for about 20 to 30 minutes where we were literally in survival mode. They were just coming at us and literally like destroying us. And I can tell you, I've never quite been so happy to go in 0-0 at half time. It was like, it felt like a victory. Wow, we could easily be two down, maybe more, and we've survived it. So at that point, I had this thought that maybe we were going to come out in the second half and turn it around and have an escape and put in a goal or two. So when we go one behind again, it's quite deflating. Came back, and the Neves goal was superb. It was a great Adama to Neto to Neves, and it was a great combination of those three. And again, frustrating, it couldn't be finished off because at the end, I don't think we're quite as brutal as Newcastle were on us in that 10-minute window, but we really looked very dangerous. And unfortunately, it really just comes down to, I think, we can do good plays, and there's room for improvement with the likes of Adama, who I think he was very good yesterday. He really, like, when he runs around players, it blows my mind, but just the finishing isn't always there. It, of course, was for the goal. But then it really just comes down to we went into the season with one known goal scorer who got hurt. The previous 2 years, we had two, really, with Jota. Obviously, Jota lost it somewhat last year, but still had those flashes like hat-tricks in the Euro League was great. I'll take the point. It would have been nice to finish it off. Certainly, story of the season, as you say.
So you brought up Adama, and I saved this on Twitter because I thought it was super interesting. He completed 14 dribbles against Newcastle. That was the highest amount by any player in any game in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. So I had seen some people on there that was like, oh, Adama was trash, which I don't know how you could think that. Yes, he didn't have the finishing product again, but he was running amok on that left side again. And I really feel like that's made him a little more versatile. Instead of just going for the byline every time, now he's cutting inside, or even when he was going to the byline, cutting in the box, passing it out to Neto, who did have a shot there. I feel like this left Adama Neto is going to do some big things at some point.
I think for me, what I noticed yesterday, and I was being critical about breaking down these teams and struggling that we're 5 at the back, but what it allowed yesterday was the advancement of Semedo and Johnny as well. That is the most advanced I've seen probably Johnny since he's been back, and bearing in mind that was an away game as well, and he was popping up in the final third lots of times. It does give those opportunities when Adama's in that position. If he's coming from the left and he's naturally going in, that opens up that channel in the left hand side for the likes of Johnny to exploit as well. And it could come that one of these days it could just click and a team could actually really feel the full force of that attacking lineup. But yeah, it's a little piecemeal at the moment. It's flashes and it just hasn't clicked. And I think when that happens, if it happens this season, it could be special, but just waiting to see it still.
It's interesting because for me, it's not like there's any player individually on the team that I dislike. They individually should do it and could do it, but it still hasn't gelled, as you say. And I think Dharma, I'm a huge fan of his. When he's on form, it's magical to watch no matter what the outcome is. Yeah, there's aspects of improvement, but I think we would miss that. Jota on the counter-attack sometimes. It's something that you miss when you don't have it. Of course, players move on. They won't all be here next year. And I think Nuno can, whoever we end up with moving forward, I think that Nuno will get us back to where we should be.
So Neves was the one who ended up scoring the lone goal yesterday. Really a brilliant header, but I thought he was far from the man of the match because really you could say that was his worst game in at least a month, probably longer, until he got that goal. Do you guys feel that same way?
For me, what Neves showed yesterday was a reflection of the team. I thought in the first half that they were dominant and it really came through the centre of the park, and him and Moutinho were getting overrun a certain amount. I thought Neves came into it more in the second half, and obviously topped it off with a goal as well, which is another string to his bow if he's getting in those types of positions as well, and certainly with a header that we've never really seen that before. So that bodes if that's something that he can start chipping in with and being a goal threat. There could be positives for the future as far as that goes.
How did you feel about Neves yesterday, Steve?
It's interesting because I don't think he had a great game over 90 minutes, but when you score a goal like that, it almost, you can sometimes forget what you didn't see. So at the end of the day, it was that play that got the point. And yeah, we can be tough on some aspects, but you score the goal and you just elevate up, particularly when goals are so scarce for us this year.
By the way, he's doing really well since he had a kid. Move that Neves have a child every year. Are we all good with that?
Sure. Yeah, at least one, maybe two, right?
Yeah. Because he's been just spectacular since his child was born, which hopefully the lockdown will be taken off soon so he can go and actually see his kid.
Yeah.
Who would you say is the man of the match? I feel like Neto could get a lot of votes. I think Cody had a really kind of sneaky game. There were a couple of times where things could have gotten out of hand and he made a few good defensive plays.
Yeah, he's always worth. And of course, being a Brit, the Brits certainly have a lot of favor for him. I'd probably vote for Adama just because he hasn't had, this season has not been as great as last season. Those Man City goals last year were just absolute beast mode, and the volume of assists with Raul and their chemistry was good. And he's scored a couple, if you count the one against Leeds, which I'll happily count. But I just think just the amount of plays he was doing, I got my old excitement back. And this year's been, I've been excited, but I've been frustrated with him a bit. So oh yeah, this guy is just something unique. So that'd be my vote. It's a close call. It's not clear cut by any means.
I think 14 completed dribbles. You certainly can make an argument that he was man of the match, and I don't think that's a stretch at all to say. How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I'd probably go with, if we're going to take a positive out, let's go for an offensive positive, and I think Adama was that. It's just that decision making. There was a couple of times like when he went for goal with the header in the first half. He could have headed it back. That was an opportunity. And that one in the second half when he did all the hard work and just put 2 yards extra on the pass to Neto. And Neto was so frustrated and flung his arms up in the air. That's the fine margins. You got genius 1 minute and then what looks to us like a simple error the next, and it all breaks down. So I'd go with Adama. But my other one, where you mentioned Cody, I also thought someone who really dug in yesterday was Saiss, and it was proper backs against the wall defense at sometimes, particularly the first.
Literally there.
And for him, it was that he won us a point with that one that hit him on the back when he was covering. I think there's no one was an 8 or a 9 yesterday. Probably Adama was a 7.5 out of 10, and yeah, maybe Saiss, the likes of Cody, weren't far behind from what was a pretty good defensive performance as well, apart from switching off and a set piece again.
How did Fabio's shot not go in? I thought for sure that was going in. Great positioning by him, and really not a bad shot. It was just like the keeper suddenly went blowfish. Just somehow managed to get a paw on it. Did you guys think that was in?
Yeah.
When he first saw it?
I was waiting for it. I thought it felt like he'd saved it and then it was about to bobble in again. It seemed like it was hung in time for a moment, but he had a good cameo. I was pleased for him because it was a really good instinctive save, but it was positive that he fashioned the chance to begin with. And not only that one, the one that Kieran Clark got in front of him, that was a goal as well that he was getting towards. That was just a brilliant piece of defending that he got in just in front of him to knock it away. So he's knocking on the door, I think, and that was a great instinctive save, a really good piece of defending as well at the same time on the other chance. I don't think he's too far away from a couple of those. With a bit of luck, going in, suddenly he's got 2 goals and he's a hero. So I don't think we're too far away.
I think he's learning positioning, and it's really starting to develop as the year goes on.
Yeah, I think it's better having him come off the bench than start, because he was never meant to be a starter. He was meant to just learn and come on, and now he's got that role again. Sometimes when he started, he always tries hard. There's no doubt about that. But in some of the games he started, I always felt like when I was playing with my brother's mates as a kid and they were 2 years older than me, I'd sometimes run around a lot, but be a little bit over my head. And in a full game, there's an aspect of that. But I think yesterday, just he's got good instinct of where to go, and just more experience and more strength and just learning. He could yet be the great that we expect him to be. And when you spend that amount of money and there's all that hype, it's just a lot of unfortunate pressure that his circumstances have him in. If it had just come more under the radar, we'd all see him as this up and comer. But when you spend a lot of money, some fans get very impatient.
There's something that the world wants you to know. Best in the world, and he comes from Mexico. I'm number 9. Give him the ball and he'll score every time.
Well, this coming week, we have 2 matchups. We have Man City on Tuesday, who we swept last year in 2 thrilling games. And then we have the Villa on Saturday. So we'll start with Man City. I've seen an argument online that, hey, this is probably going to get a loss. So let's go ahead and start young guys, similar to the way Wolves did against Man U back in December. I've seen arguments against that as far as, well, you can't just throw away a game because you never know what will happen. Where do you guys stand? Is this a game to throw out all your starters, or maybe give some of the younger guys a shot against an elite team?
I don't think we need to change the lineup much, because going back to last year, we were often playing Thursday night games with a squad probably even smaller and getting by just fine. Just to be honest, anything a point or more would be almost like a shock and a bonus. But I don't think you can give it up before the game. With Man U, I think we're 48 hours between games, and something had to give there, unfortunately. So maybe a change or two. But for example, if you had Raul or Podence fit, or Bolly, you could do a bit of rotating. But there's not really. Maybe Kilman could go in the back and Dendoncker in the midfield, and you rest Moutinho. But the team's getting close to choosing itself, except for 1 or 2 spots right now, just with who's out, really. So I would just go for it. There's 4 days before Saturday, and I think the Villa have a midweek game too, because I think this game is brought forward because of a cup, I think, but I think Villa have a makeup game in the middle of the week anyway, so maybe
they have a.
Who are they playing in the week?
They are playing Sheffield on Wednesday. So
Okay.
they actually have less of a turnaround, but they're also playing Sheffield.
Sheffield United on Wednesday. So they play United on Wednesday.
Yeah. Paul, what are your thoughts?
I think Nuno's appreciated having a fairly settled team for these past few games, and that's what he's typically liked. But I think with the likes of Johnny, that's going to come too soon for him. I think coming back from injury, I could probably see Aït-Nouri starting on Tuesday. Maybe Moutinho being rested. Maybe I still see a 5 at the back, but maybe a 5-3-2. And if I could see a little parallel to the Manchester United game where it's the 5, but Cody plays on the right, it's Saiss as the sweeper and Kilman comes in, that would allow Dendoncker to be pushed up into a 3 in midfield to give Moutinho a rest. There's a 2 up top or a false 9. I'm not sure, but I can see some tweaks, but not sweeping changes of you got a whole new starting 11 much.
Yeah, I wondered if this was going to be the game to go with a 5-3-2 and see if you can give Adama and Neto a little bit of a break. And then if it's close, bring them on in the second half. So maybe start Willen and Fabio up front, which we really haven't seen. I like the idea to bring Den Donker up. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Otasoe come in. We haven't seen him in a while. So I feel like there is a little bit. I'd like to see Neto and Adama at least get half a game of rest. I think that would be good.
Where we mentioned, Steve mentioned about the rotation last year, and that it's got a lot of parallels to that game because that was a 5-3-2, and Catrone and Raul started that game, and it was Traore as a wing back for the first 70 minutes, and Vinagre played, and everyone was really worried because that it was a rotation and it looked a weaker team. I don't think it may not necessarily be one that is worried about making changes. Seems he did it last year and it ultimately turned out successful, and maybe that 5-3-2 gives them some confidence that there's a team there and a shape that can cause City some problems, but they're a juggernaut at the moment. So
yeah, they really are.
I think it's going to be a miracle, I think, even just to avoid defeat, I think.
Who do you think better team? Liverpool last year or Man City now?
For me, Man City at the moment, they're just Rolls Royce, and it's throughout the team. You got centre back, Ruben Diaz that's come in, who's just looked absolutely phenomenal, and the type of centre half that we give our body parts for. And then Gundogan in midfield, who's arguably been one of the players of the year as a midfielder, and he just names after names that you can come out with in this City team. And I just think they've been pretty much since the slowest start to the season, but as soon as they've kicked in, they've just looked phenomenal.
What do you think, Steve?
Close call. Liverpool before COVID was just outrageous. I don't think they had a loss. I think they had won every game and had one draw or something crazy.
Yeah.
And after COVID, they weren't quite as good, and they didn't need to be. They just coasted it a bit, and of course. And then the year before, both teams were great, and neither of them was losing a game, and City had that edge. But I think over the years, City have been the best team with the longevity, but Liverpool did just crush it last year and had it all but won before the lockdowns.
Do you think they're going to win the quad this year?
Good question.
It's legit because they already run Carabao. I feel like they've almost got the EPL locked up. They've had the easiest freaking draw in the FA Cup, and then Champions League. You just never know, but man, the way they are playing right now, that's a legit possibility.
Yeah, it'd be cool if they did on that respect.
Especially if we can beat them Tuesday, then we could say we beat the quad.
Yeah, then we have claim for all of their trophies, in my opinion. So
100%.
All four. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go back to predictions for that game here in a minute, but let's look ahead to Villa first. Villa's been playing really well. Obviously, the team that was nearly relegated last year is way in the rearview window. What do you think Wolves need to be thinking going into that contest?
We need to win that one. There's no doubt that they've been very impressive this year. It hurts me to say so, but from the great escape last year on the last day and a bit of help from goal line technology, that was what last year was all about. But I suppose that's just how it goes. I think, what was it? A 1-0 defeat with a late penalty last time, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's maddening when our two biggest rivals we lost to based on penalties. Not that we were great in either game, far from it. Right now we're only 5 points behind them. They do have two in hand, but we certainly want to remind them that we're the best Midlands team. And I've got some friends who are Villa fans. We keep it very good natured. Actually, we don't have a fallout over football like some people do, but it would certainly be nice to just go there and win. And I think we can.
I think it suits us more to go to their place at the moment, the way that we're set up, and their good form means that they're not clambering for points, so they can play fairly free-spirited and be more attacking, and I think that'll suit us more away from home than it did at Molineux, when the onus was on us more to attack that way. I think Grealish will still be out, so that's a positive. I think they won on Saturday, but he's still a big miss, and there's a lot of creativity that comes from him. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think it could be fairly entertaining. I just hope that we, being away from home, we don't sit back too much and we take the game to them. I think that could be more of a surprise to them if we're actually proactive and we start on the front foot.
How much of an advantage do you think Wolves have by having that extra day of rest?
A little, but at the end of the day, I think it's interesting without the fans, because there's nothing like a local derby with the fans in the stands and around the grounds before it. It's pretty intense. So, but I'm sure the managers will get both the teams up for it, and I'm sure they're very up for it. But in a match like this, I think you'll both go on the field energized. I'll take the extra day, but I don't really think it's like a deal breaker, so to speak.
Yeah, I think this stage of the season, it's weird. The games come thick and fast, then you got a big long international break, and it's going to get bitty again and broken up and things like that. So it's just a case, I think, of taking each game as it comes, really, and the rest element goes out the window, I think.
So with these two games this week, I think we can assume that Aït-Nouri is going to have to start one of them just because Johnny's coming back. If you could choose one between Fabio, Otasowie, or Hoover, which of those three would you like seeing get more playing time this week in the two games combined?
Be good if all of them got some minutes. I think Fabio, probably just because we haven't got any goals out of Jose, or not that much, not even much of a sign yet, unfortunately. Hopefully he'll get into the system and it'll come, but I think maybe Fabio will start against City. Maybe Fabio and Jose, because as you said before, that hasn't tried. You think of you're not scoring goals, you got to change something. You're not scoring enough goals, you got to change something. So maybe that's what we need to do.
I'd like to see Otasowie have some minutes. I think we get into these types of games, and we're not really playing for anything, but we're playing to see who can take the opportunity. I think we know what's coming from Hoover. The only question around him may be the knock that brought Semedo off on Saturday. How serious is that? Is that going to maybe mean Tuesday comes too soon for Semedo, so Hoover starts in that game? If that's the case, I would probably see us going fairly defensive. And when it's a Man City away, we've got nothing to lose. Yeah, stick Owen in the middle in his proper position and just give him license and go and enjoy himself.
Yeah. Here's a thought. You just reminded me of something. One of my favorite childhood memory of Molineux was a game where we played Liverpool when Liverpool were in their prime, and we were just mediocre, below average as usual. And we beat them 4-1. And Andy Gray was our star striker. He was injured. And both the left and right back, which was Derek Park and Jeff Palmer, were injured. And the starters were John Humphrey at right back and Mick Holyfield at left back. And they were against Ian Rush and Kenny Dalglish and these Liverpool stars. And we had the measure of them, and we won the game 4-1. Emmeline Hughes, a central defender, scored the last goal, mishit the ball, and it just trundled in. It was a great night as a kid, and so maybe with that in mind, you have Aït-Nouri on the left and Hoover on the right, and it'll bring that back, and we'll beat them 4-1 with Adama crushing them again. Sounds easy. I think.
I like that. That sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Describe your anger level if Morgan Gibbs White starts either of these two games.
None, really. He's obviously not. I'm sure he'll be on his way in the summer. I don't really get pissed at team choices. It's maybe after the game. But I think when you've been a fan for as long as I have, you've been deflated so much that you somewhat become immune to the disappointment, I think some of our fans have a hard time with that, because when you've been waiting a lifetime and you're suddenly good, 3 good years in a row, and when you lose it, it's just crushing. It's just part of how it is, really.
I know Paul would not be pleased to see Morgan's Gibbs White at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I mean, he hasn't shown any reason why he should be picked. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. At some point, you have to stop giving him chances and give it to guys like Vitana and Odasoe.
Yeah, he got recalled because of injury, and I get that, but it hasn't. But there's really nothing that we've seen that kind of. He was doing fine at Swansea. That's his level right now. He could be a top guy in the Championship. Not everyone's gonna make it to the top, or maybe a few years in the Championship, and he'll step it up again.
Yeah. So let's talk predictions. First, we'll start with Man City. Paul, I'm making quite a comeback, aren't I? I know I had a draw again this week.
Yeah, I think it's neck and neck now between yourself and me at the top. So
comeback kid right here. So I'll start with you then. How are you feeling about the Man City result?
I just can't see it. I really can't. They're too good. I think they've got our number this year.
Yeah, they have everybody's number, I think.
Yeah. As long as we don't get blown out, I think we could. We might get a point, but we'd have to be lucky. But I'm going to go for a 2-0 loss.
What do you think, Steve?
The kind of dreamer in me says that we'll beat them again, but more realistically, I think it's going to be like 3-0. I don't think we're going to live with them, unfortunately. And I hate to say it, but yeah, that's the kind of sensible answer.
Man, I was going 2-0 as well, but I can't. You know what? I'll give them a goal on a counterattack. So I'll say 2-1 Man City. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked to see Wolves like suddenly come out hot, score the first goal, and then have to ensue an onslaught for the rest of the game.
So the opposite of football then. So.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, let's look at Aston. I'll start with you, Paul.
I'm gonna go for an often the regular derby result of 1 each. And I don't think that'll be too bad away from home, really.
I'll say 2-1 to Wolves, with Villa scoring first and making us all spill our morning pints and get pissed off, and then just a resurgence and a bit of overdue magic. Please.
I'm going to go a draw as well, but I think it'll be a little more exciting. I can see some stupid thing happening in stoppage time one way or the other. 2-2 draw. That's all I'll go. Some stupid penalty. That's what I'm calling. It'll be, I don't know who's going to get it, but somebody will get some dumb one in the 92nd minute. Okay, Paul, so what no stupid questions have arrived this week?
That's right, that part of the show where you get in touch and ask us anything you like that's related to the Wolves in a total judgment-free zone. You can do this on our Facebook page or via Twitter or by emailing us at hello@wholelotofwolves.com. There's a couple this week. Chris Worsfield on Twitter. Chris asked, now that we've had a while to assess Willian Jose, what's everyone's thoughts? Personally, I'm struggling to see what his contribution is. On balance, we so rarely create chances for him, but when we do, he's not there. So what's the take on Willian?
Yeah, I think this was a really great question. Also, I'm going to have to go with our buddy Clive Hill and start calling him Billy Joe, because I think that's a tremendous nickname there, Billy Joe. After those first couple games, I was ready to pony up the money, but it doesn't seem like he's still developed that chemistry in it. I almost feel like Fabio's starting to get in the better positions than Willen is. Yeah, I can definitely. I think this is a great question, because if he keeps playing like this, I don't think there's any way they exercise that option unless Raul is done.
Yeah, it's. I guess right now he hasn't. It's been 5-6 games without a goal now, and you just expect. It's hard shoes to fill for anybody. But Catrone was in, Catrone was out. He got a little bit of I think he played the Chorley game and didn't start any other time. And Chorley game was just
Brutal.
Chorley game. But he's really, at this point, you've got two options to start up front, and one of them is way before his time, and the other one just hasn't fitted in yet. So I guess you got to balance the two. Still, who knows? Wouldn't it be great if he could just explode into some life against Villa and score twice, and they can all work it out? He's scored. I think his last game before the transfer was a European game. He scored 2 goals, and we're thinking we have the new Raul, but right now it's just not happened.
It's getting sucked into the YouTube hype of his clips and thinking he was going to be ideal, and we've seen next to nothing of those. But even those first few games, he'd pick the ball up a little earlier, and he would look up and he'd run, and he was having a shot from distance. I think he had one versus Arsenal and things like that. It's just not that. There just doesn't seem to be that complete package with him yet. But it is early doors, and it's still not a team that's really playing well. And we could talk about chances a ton. We're not a team who creates boatload of chances anyway. And even when we are on form, it's not like he's going to get 2 or 3 opportunities. It's going to be those 1s or 2s that we were just so thankful for that Raul had put him away. Raul had constantly, he'd have games last season where you wouldn't see him in the first half, and then up he'd pop and he'd get the winner, like Tottenham away last year. And Raul had games like that countless times where you barely see him. There might be a little bit of link-up play, but up he pops with a winner or a penalty and things like that. I think it's just the case that he's coming in at a time when we're not doing great, and that's reflected in how he's doing. In terms of signing, it's a tricky one. Is it better to invest that money elsewhere? But who's out there? If it was that struggle to get him in the first place, or get a body in that fits the mold, because what it's certainly highlighted is that we definitely need 3 strikers. That's Raul, either Willian or another, and then Fabio as the protege. So is there someone out there? Will there be someone out there that's better in the summer? It's going to be a tricky one for sure.
And we have another question, which I thought was great, especially for someone like me that's never been to Wolverhampton. So, Paul, you want to read it?
Yes, it's a great one from Leif Coleman. Leif emailed this and he said, "It's my hope to visit Molineux, do a tour, and take in at least 1 match next year or so with my wife. Question is Wolverhampton somewhere where we can stay and do things, i.e. restaurants, museums, etc., or would you recommend Birmingham or other places? Never having been, I've got no context. My wife is obsessed with visiting Brighton, but my love of the Wolves has me wanting to really take in the area." What do you reckon, Steve, from when you go back? What would your advice be to Leif?
Wolverhampton is my favorite tourist place in the world, but I'm biased. It's fair to say if you're a fan of the team, you're going to have to really look hard for stuff to do. Of course, there's certain pubs I like, but I probably like them because I've been popping back to them for a couple of decades on my return. There's my favorite Indian restaurants on Broad Street, Javan's Balti House. It's just an Indian restaurant, but it's great. There is the motorcycle races on a Monday night, the Wolves Speedway, if you want to see a different kind of sport. I'd probably give, if you got match day on one day and a stadium tour on another day, and that would probably cover the time in Wolverhampton. You could find stuff, but there's probably better tourist sites elsewhere if it's your only time going to the country.
I think you're right there. In those couple of days, you've probably done it with Wolverhampton. What Wolverhampton misses out on as a city is some decent hotels in the city centre. You've got one by the railway station now. You've got the Novotel that the players stay in before the game. So that's always an option to maybe get lucky and get some photos. But there's a real dearth of nice, high quality accommodation in Wolverhampton City. So that would probably lead me to suggest stay in one of those kind of the night before and the night of the game to soak in the atmosphere and do a full day, and you go for drinks before the game, go to the match, do the tour the following day. But yeah, but Birmingham is good in terms of you've got more choice of accommodation. It's easy to get to Wolverhampton from Birmingham, either quickly on the train or the tram. So logistics wise, you don't really have an issue there. But I'd probably say, Leaf, that really you want to look at where your flights come into, really, because if you got cheap flights into London, you could probably be 90 minutes away via train from Wolverhampton, and it'd probably be a equidistant time to get down to Brighton in the south as well. So you never know, if they hang on to their Premier League place, you may get lucky and get to a home game and take the wife to Brighton and get to an away game as well. That's the benefit of England, is I just worry about getting wherever you come into, if it's London, Birmingham or Manchester, wherever that flight comes into, you're pretty lucky. You've got an opportunity to travel around the country pretty freely. I think you'll be just fine.
And do you recommend anybody going to West Bromwich?
Never. No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, but of course, the beauty of it is it's something that now, since there was a second MLS team in LA, we got Galaxy and LAFC, it feels a bit like home with that rivalry, because there's nothing like having rival teams that you can drive to in about 20 minutes. When I first moved here, I went to a Dodger game and I'm like, who's the big rivals? They're like San Francisco. I'm like, that's 6 hours away. No, who are the rivals? That's our local rivals. And that's like Wolves to Glasgow or something, Wolves to Inverness, Scotland. So yeah, there's those local teams that you don't really want to go to West Bromwich, but it's right there, and that's the magic of the rivalry.
So what we'll do now is, back from last week's episode where we had Jason Guy on helping to promote his Tales from the Tape book, we ran a contest. We'll be giving away a copy, and here it doesn't really work very well on
I see it
on a podcast, but here's the hat, here's the entrants that are in the hat, and I'm gonna pick one of the lucky winners out.
And by hat, he means a toboggan.
That's right. Okay. The winner is Leif Coleman of Ithaca, New York, home of Cornell University. So yeah, Leif, you can probably, you could keep the book, and that would be a good read on the flight over if you do make that trip next season. But we'll be in touch and we'll get you that copy. Congratulations, and thanks for listening.
That's awesome. Yeah. And where'd you say Leif was from?
He's from Ithaca, New York.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Speaking of Leif's trip, by the way, I didn't know they were going, but there's some LAFC fans I know who went on a European tour last year. They were going to like different countries, and then they fly into Birmingham on a night where we had a Europa League game. So I sent one a message on Facebook and said, are you going to the Wolves game tonight? And he says, yeah, can you recommend a pub? So it says, yeah, there's either Great Western or Hog's Head. Go to one of those. And they messaged me back later and said, great choice. So maybe it is more of a touristy thing than us locals think it is.
I know. I can't wait to go once all the lockdowns lifted and everything. I'm super excited about visiting.
It's worth it. My last trip back to England was March of 2019, and it coincided with the Cup quarterfinal against Man United.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and my brother's a season ticket holder, and he couldn't go. I'd have loved to have gone with him, but he gave me his ticket. I know his friends who he sits with. I've known them for years, and I've been to games on trips back, but the time before was a championship game, and it was not full, and the team wasn't doing so good, and this was pretty brutal. The game was my nephew, he goes to every game too, and it was an 8 p.m. game. So he says to me, you want to meet in the pub before the game? I says, yeah, what time are you going? Because normally you go 2 hours before. He says, we're going at 1 p.m. I'm like, but it kicks off at 8. He says, yeah. I says, I'll meet you at 6. I can't handle it for that long. But going to the ground for that game, it felt like we were going to war. It was intense. And then, of course, winning that game and having Raul and Jota score, who were at that was our big two at that point. It was really a dream come true to watch that game and win it. Obviously, plans to go since have been hampered with lockdown, but I can't wait to go back.
That's great. So as we wrap up this week's episode, Steve, why not tell people how they can get in touch with you?
You can find me on Facebook. You can email me. My email address is dreamteamspeedway@sbcglobal.net. And yeah, definitely appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a lot of fun to talk Wolves with the Houston Wolves.
And you need to come visit are you an LAFC or a Galaxy guy?
LAFC, I would go to Galaxy games, but it always seemed a bit flat, to be honest. I went a few times when Beckham was there, and he was class, but he always seemed a bit frustrated with who he was playing with. Obviously, when Robbie Keane was there as ex-Wolves, it was cool, and I liked watching Robbie Keane, but I'd always go to a Galaxy game thinking that was cool, and then I'd not think about it for a year. And then I went to LAFC opening game on the second season and just went because I just wanted to see it. And literally, it felt like home. The atmosphere was insane. They have this standing behind the goal. It's pretty brutal. And so at that point, I thought, no, I have it. Before I had somewhere to go, and now I have a team. So I'd say it's LAFC every day. Yeah.
So quick little story. My daughter, I took her to a game. Her first game was an LAFC Dynamo game, and LAFC was up 2-0. Dynamo had been playing horrible. Dynamo scored 2 goals in stoppage time, with the last one on a corner at the final thing. And she loved it so much. We went the next week, and yeah, she loves soccer and loves Wolves and loves Alex Morgan. That was quite an experience. LAFC is a lot nicer. There's less fights in the street than when the Galaxy are out here. I'll say that.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm surprised, but okay. Yeah. I'll have a word with the boys and see.
Come visit us. Come visit us when COVID's done.
No, that's great. I will do. Thank you for the invite. Absolutely.
Listeners, thanks for your continued support. If you are tuning in for the first time, please hit subscribe, like the podcast, share it, give us a 5-star review across your podcast listening platform of choice. This helps us tremendously with our exposure. We'll be back again after next weekend to review these 2 away games and then look ahead to Liverpool. So in the meantime, stay safe out there, look after you and your pack. In Nuno we trust, and up the Wolves.